She thumps a cane and drinks champagne. She's formidable and judgmental, but we can guarantee that she's a quintessential Lady D, who recognizes great potential. What would Danbury do?
Welcome to What Would Danbury Do, your guide to Julia Quinn's Bridgerton series from A to V. Buckle up, folks, because this episode we're talking about Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, Book 4 in the Bridgerton series, and the official halfway point. It's got everything: mystery, intrigue, mild fat phobia. Don't forget, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram as @BridgertonPod, and would love for you to tweet at us using the hashtag WWDDPod. It's a great way to help other people find the show.
It's been
Been a week.
Oh my god. It's been a fucking year, man.
I just keep laughing. I just keep laughing because it's so fucking ridiculous. And it's not because I find it funny.
No.
It's just ridiculous.
Like, I did see one, I saw a tweet the other day that was like, the world ended in 2012 and we've all been in the bad place this whole time. And I was like, yeah.
That tracks.
It took me like way too fucking long to make the connection between 2012 and the end of the Mayan calendar or whatever apocalypse we thought we were going through at that point. But like, hi, I'm Rudy.
I'm Adele.
And I'm Kate. Today we're talking about Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Julia Quinn, published in 2002 by Avon Books. The dedication to Paul reads, "And for Paul, even though the closest thing you'd ever find to a romance in his field is a lecture called The Kiss of Death." It's the fourth book in the series and follows the Bridgerton most likely to request extra sandwiches, Colin. It also follows Penelope Featherington, who, like Colin, is a third child. But unlike Colin, she doesn't act like a whiny fucking baby about it. So this is a secretly badass heroine story that begins in 1812, precisely 2 days before Penelope's 16th birthday, when Penelope meets and falls into utterly unrequited love. Fast forward 12 years, and Colin is still mostly clueless, and Penelope is firmly on the shelf. But shit is about to get real when Lady Danbury sets a challenge for London to discover the true identity of the mysterious gossip columnist Lady Whistledown. Whoa, fuck. I don't know who Lady Whistledown is. Lady Whistledown. And just a quick warning, there are massive spoilers ahead.
I think what's kind of interesting about this one as a starting point is this is the first time we've had a heroine and a hero that we've known for a while. It's a very like Easter egg heavy kind of experience to read this, which I guess makes sense because we're 4 books in.
But you can tell that they're Julia Quinn's favourites. She spends the most time on them across the whole series than she probably does anyone else.
I have a really vague memory, and I might be wrong about the number, but I think that this series was only ever supposed to be 4 books. Like, I think this was actually meant to be the end.
That makes a lot of sense considering most of the next 4.
That's rude.
I mean, it ties up the Lady God, I don't know what's wrong with me. I keep calling her Lady Whistledown. Anyway, it ties up the Lady Oh, fuck, I don't know what's wrong with me.
It ties up the mystery.
Yes. Oh my god, it ties up the Lady Whistledown mystery, which it's a weird place to tie up a mystery halfway through a series. Particularly because Lady Whistledown had been used as a narrator through the whole first part of the series. To suddenly just ditch your narrator was interesting. I was going to go through all of the books and check the dates because I wasn't entirely sure that there wasn't a date error, because in Daphne's book, in the epilogue, Lady Whistledown knows that they're calling the baby David before it's announced.
Daphne's are all been born by this point. The youngest is like 7 in this book.
Yeah. So Lady Whistledown must have been. Shall we just dive into the spoilers?
I was hoping we'd wait until halfway through because for some reason this book waits until halfway through.
Well, and this is the thing that I really wanted to talk about because the way that it's written is really interesting. By this point in time, I would be very surprised if there were readers who were faithful to the series who did not know who Lady Whistledown was. I think it had been signposted enough through the series that if you didn't know, then you at least were incredibly suspicious. But the first half of this book is written as if Penelope doesn't know who it is.
I find that really difficult as a device because it just doesn't work that suddenly you get access to all parts of her perspective when you don't for the first half. I get it at why she chose to do that, like the intrigue of it, but I just don't think it was wholly successful.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Like, she had to do some syntactical backflips to use the conditional verb around Penelope when somebody was talking about Whistledown. And, Penelope thought some weird things to herself along the way when people were guessing who Whistledown was. Like, I understand why Julia Quinn chose to do it that way, but I agree, it wasn't entirely successful. I think it might have been more successful if we just sort of dived in at the beginning and found out who Whistledown was, and then just then dealt with the reality of that and how Whistledown was hiding her identity through the book, so that we almost became accomplices as opposed to the people who were surprised.
I remember reading this book the first time and being relatively sure that I knew who Lady Whistledown was. And then Penelope seems to not know. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm wrong. It's an interesting bait and switch to do to your readers, to suggest that it's Penelope and then have her actually be set a challenge to discover who Lady Whistledown is, and then make it seem like, is it Lady Danbury? Is it Penelope? Is it someone we don't know yet? Like, I think by the time it was revealed, I had actually given up on the idea that it was Penelope.
Because you're right. Like, Penelope has been there through all of the other books. She's been presented in this incredibly warm and like compelling way, so that by the time we get to her book, like, everybody I think was really excited to get to Penelope's book and being more than who she thought she was. So yeah, I'm a little resentful that I had to listen to Colin's whining.
And yet Penelope is a duplicitous witch in many respects.
I don't know that I am. I know.
Those are some strong words.
I still love her, but like, there's this moment really early on where she confesses to hiding Lady Whistledown from her mum because she didn't want her feelings to be hurt, and she gets commended for being kind, and I'm like, she fucking wrote it. Like, she wasn't very kind to them, and I'm not saying they didn't deserve it, but she actually loves them. So that's where it sort of, like...
Yeah, when we don't find out what her family thought, really.
By the time it's public knowledge, the book is pretty much ending.
I find that's quite at odds to the way that Lady Danbury finds a bosom buddy in Penelope, and they're really kind at the Smythe Smith musical, these girls that are being tortured. And in some ways, Penelope has tortured other people, including her family. You don't really get a moment of talking about how razor sharp she's been. It's like sort of discussed as being her wit or how like astute she is, but it's not, like, at times Whistledown is mean.
Colin and Penelope do have a discussion about that very thing, that Lady Whistledown really only writes truly cutting pieces about, in quotes, people who deserve it. The rest of society who gets mocked, it's kind of gentle. Like, it's about things that Like, yeah, it's about fashion. It's about sort of ridiculous behavior that...
I understand all that, but can you imagine being her older sister having been sledged for 12 years?
This is one of the things, though, because, like, when we think back to The Viscount Who Loved Me, and Kate is a little bit... she's a little bit miffed that she's not been written about in Lady Whistledown, because to be written about is to be important.
Yeah.
And not long after she has that conversation with Penelope about, well, at least you get dragged by Lady Whistledown. No one's ever written about, like, all of a sudden Kate is looking like a burnt daffodil. And she feels like she's made it. Like, she's really excited to have been named. There is social cachet to being important enough to be noticed by Lady Whistledown. So I think that there's, like, yeah.
Agree, but I just kept on thinking about being a sibling and having known that had happened for 12 years straight.
Okay, all right, look, Penelope is my ride and die, and I refuse to give up on that, but I will concede. Yeah, I imagine that she's going to have a super uncomfortable conversation with her mother a little bit later on about the things that she was saying.
I'll be honest, the conversation that I would desperately love to have seen was between Penelope and Violet once Violet has learned the truth. I mean, the very introduction of the series is what she sees as an implication that her children, like, there's a question mark over.
Yes.
Yeah, and Daphne has to calm her down.
And has to be like, no, it's really explicitly.
Yeah. And Violet's all, she shouldn't even be talking about your parentage. Like, dude, that's not okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah.
Can we go all the way back to the beginning and just kind of talk about how Lady Danbury kicks everything off by setting this challenge to discover Lady Whistledown's identity?
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
What do you guys think about the theory that Lady Danbury sets the challenge to find Lady Whistledown because she knows that it's Penelope? And she wants Penelope to step up.
That's interesting. I think that if she did that, that would be a dick move on Lady Danbury's part.
Because the more that I think about it, the more I'm convinced that that's what was actually happening. She knew the truth. She'd figured it out on her own and then decided to give Penelope a push.
I mean, it makes sense. I think it makes a lot of sense because we learn in the book that Lady Danbury relates very heavily to Penelope. Like, she sees a lot of Penelope in her younger self. So it's almost like the opportunity to be like, you know, those memes that go around Facebook, like, what would you tell yourself, your 20-year-old self that you didn't know then, but you know now, sort of thing. So she's like actually living that meme.
Yeah.
I still think it would be a big move, though. You don't out your friends. That's not cool.
Well, I don't know that she's intending to out her. I think she's trying... Oh, well, actually, it's not that much better, is it, to say that she's trying to encourage Penelope to out herself?
Yeah, like, maybe if you have a discussion with your friends. Don't just publicly announce in a ballroom that, you think it's time that she comes out of her, I don't know, writing closet.
I think that if she did do that, she would have to think no one was smart enough to get her.
Well, that does sound a little bit like Lady Danbury. She thinks everybody else is an idiot, so...
And that was the thing, like, the more that I thought about it, and it's a theory that I've had before, but, like, on the reread, I was like, oh, that's right, because there's so much, like, it also kind of comes into the... Yeah, like, there are people that Lady Danbury identifies with and goes about saving, and sometimes in ways that are... that, from the outside, don't look like a save. When she breaks the violin because the cellist doesn't want to perform.
And then
that's-
take
yeah.
6 months to get a replacement.
Yeah. And insists that she's going to spend all of this money on getting the absolute best violin because it'll take so long that we won't have to deal with another musicale. So like she's got some strange ways of saving people, but I do think that when she wants to,
I think we can have it as a potential, but I don't feel strong enough to say it was actual.
Okay.
Yeah, look, she's meddling enough that I'm actually coming around to thinking that maybe this theory is on point. Although still maintain my original opinion that it's kind of a dick move.
Well, okay, so then my follow-up question to this is, if it wasn't her intent, does she have a theory about who Whistledown might be?
I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it.
Yeah, I hadn't either, and now I'm really thinking about it.
What do people think out there, our listeners?
We have like 2 minutes of silence on the podcast. You can just hear all of us going, huh.
Because otherwise I don't know why she's bothering with, like, I get it, like, she's rich, she's old, she's bored, but like I feel like if you're going to set a challenge like that, you probably have a strong sense of like who it actually will be.
I do think Lady Danbury thinks that far ahead, though. I mean, I don't necessarily know that in her character she's a planner. She very much seems to be a open my mouth and my thoughts come out, and I'm old enough that I don't have any consequences kind of person.
With this side of shit stirring. Yeah.
Yeah, with the side of shit stirring.
Yeah.
Now that I've had time to ponder it, I believe two things. One, Lady Danbury knows absolutely that it's Penelope who is Lady Whistledown. And number two, she most probably does the announcement at that ball on purpose to give Penelope a kick up the bum. I just love that there's like every high school story sort of has the mean girl that made your life a living hell.
Mm.
And like Colin's horror at the fact that she had to write again to say it wasn't Cressida. I totally got that. Like you don't want the person that has made your life a living hell to get credit for anything that you've done. I feel like he should have understood that to a degree.
But how could he possibly? Because he has not been bullied. I had an argument with a friend of mine who is reading the series for the first time, and there is a scene earlier on where Colin comes across Penelope as she's walking to the Bridgerton's house. He kind of catches her out in this sort of dorky moment and then offers to dance with her, and she's like, no. People will think that we're courting. And my friend was like, I just wish they'd fucking danced. I was like, no. Those are the words of someone who has never been bullied.
I think that's one of the things that Julia Quinn did so well from Penelope's point of view, is that bittersweetness to it. Like, you want to hope for Penelope, but you completely understand why she's protecting herself, and you feel quite protective about her. And also, you feel the sting. Like, I felt the sting with that too. Like, I was like, no, don't dance. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, you're right. It would be hilarious until it wasn't.
There's just something so nice about the popular guy noticing the wallflower kind of trope.
Her familiarity with the Bridgertons is also allows you to spend more time in the family as well, unlike a lot of the other books where they all go on adventures.
And I think that there's something quite poignant about Penelope having been in love with this guy from afar for so long. Like, it's just hitting all of the tropes that I love so much in romance novels, like the unrequited love, the popular guy and wallflower heroine, the heroine like learning to become herself in public, finding out that there's more to her than she thought.
And
Yeah,
slowly
it's
revealing
just-
that to other people. Like, I think that's, because
Yeah.
And
I
the
mean-
hero recognizing he's an idiot for not noticing it before. And then being like, I don't understand why nobody else notices how beautiful and amazing you are. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know either, Colin.
unrequited love and pining can be really fucking boring and awkward to read, right? Like, there is certainly books where you're just like, oh dear God, like, just get a life. And the thing is that Penelope has actually got a life. She's not hanging around him. She's, she is spending time with her best friend who happens to be his sister, which means that when they do interact, it's probably uncomfortable for her, and like there's definitely clues that it certainly has been more uncomfortable for her previous to this book, but like she likes him because she knows who he is as a person, and then so she treats him like a friend, and that allows him to treat her like a friend, even when he's like, his version of friendship is probably a little bit shitty.
He describes her as not sure what she was previously, and one of it was like acquaintance. And I'm like, that's probably quite. I mean, he lists a lot of other things, but I think acquaintance is kind of accurate. But I think, like, going into this, we'd had that scene where she walked in on the brothers talking, and Colin said that he would never marry her, and she says, like, I didn't ask you to marry me. And I think that really, I mean, it gets revisited in this book, but coming into this novel that, like you said, Rudy, she's not waiting around, and she's not going to be a doormat. Yes, she loves him,
but it's not the only aspect to her character. Like, that's one thing that is true about her, but there are a lot of other things that are also true about her. And getting him is not necessarily the victory, I think, of the book. It's part of the victory, sure, but her real victory is her coming into herself and being confident in herself, which means that he then notices her. But it's also taking ownership of her accomplishments and taking ownership, I guess, of all of the things that she was, witty and acerbic and maybe a little bit nasty. Adele, we're going to continue to talk about that. And
I'm gonna get
yeah.
It'll be written by me.
Yeah.
But I love Penelope. She's like one of my favorite characters in this entire series. I think she's quite nuanced. I love her relationship with Eloise, and I guess that's one of my regrets is, like, in order for this book to happen, Eloise kind of has to take a giant step back. That's...
Yeah, but I think we get to know Eloise a little bit more because we see her outside of the context of her family. That was actually, I really love that part in, I think it might be the first sex scene where Penelope is touching Colin's hair and she's like, it feels just like Eloise's, and then starts giggling. Like, I thought that was really, really, like, it was nice. It was real. It felt authentic. And
that comparing, that thing when you've got a close friend and it's not competitive, but you can't help but use the other as a benchmark.
Actually, okay, so this is something that I just started to think about. There's a conversation that Eloise and Penelope have. If one of them was a man, they would marry each other. Is part of the appeal of Colin that he is the male Eloise? Or part of the appeal to Penelope is that this is the heteronormative version of her relationship with her best friend.
She discusses him being nice. Like, he's just a nice guy, but she's probably...
What about him is different to Eloise?
It's true, actually. Is Penelope actually gay, or is she a bit like Laurie in Little Women and just looking to marry into the Bridgertons because she wants to be a Bridgerton, or is she actually in love with Colin? Oof.
Especially within the context of that funny moment of having sex with male Eloise and having this sort of connection to her best
Eloise
friend's
in that moment.
OG Eloise and her hair. Like,
I think you could make a really valid point that that there's a bit of queer baiting going on in there.
We've not really gone into this, but like, as a series, the Bridgertons could stand to be more diverse in terms of representation of race and sexuality, all kinds of things,
Anyone
really.
who's not a straight white person with money.
Yeah. Maybe Julia Quinn is not the one to have written it, but like if this series had been written by someone in that kind of new school of romance today, we might have had Eloise and Penelope as a couple. Okay, so
if we want to get back to the pining just really quickly, I loved the part when Penelope says, I love you to him. And then he says, I know. And then there's like this little paragraph about how he'd known, but he tried to push away because it was uncomfortable to be loved by somebody and not love them back.
Yeah.
Particularly when that person was kind and like there was nothing wrong with them. And it's, so it meant that he would never be cruel to her, but he also could never flirt with her either because he had to walk that very fine line between not hurting her. And I thought that was, for all of his whiny man baby privilege, he's so careful with Penelope's feelings. And then when he starts noticing her, like he's still incredibly careful with her feelings and he still is there to meet her emotional needs, telling her she's beautiful, telling her that she's a great writer, telling her all of the things, saying out loud all the things that she needs to hear out loud to sort of help bolster this developing self-confidence that she's working on.
Right.
I think that as a partner, he's beautifully supportive.
Recognizing that he's done something worthy of apologizing, and actually so they have that fight, and it's the fight where she calls him on his bullshit because he talks about how he has nothing, and she was like, you have money, you have privilege, you have popularity, you're a man. If there is something that you feel is missing from your life, fucking fix it, because you can. Like, and don't try and because he kind of tries to be like, well, so could you. Just, no, because gender is the thing.
The fact that he's jealous of her, how often do you see that in like depictions of like a romance? Like he's jealous of her success. It's annoying because he fixates on it, but it's nice. It's gone the other way. Because usually we read a lot of heroines that are jealous of the freedom that the male characters have, but to sort of have it upended a little bit is quite refreshing, even though he's a douche nozzle about it.
I guess it's that he sees her as having something worthy of envy, because it is quite rare for a hero to recognize that. I think that there are quite a few romance heroes who could stand to like recognize that the heroines they're kind of being paired up with have something bigger or better than they do, and that they should strive for more. But like, yeah.
Can I mention something about the sex scene?
Yes.
One of them.
Which one?
So he says, I never dreamed I would want you this way, and it kind of is a big bummer mid-copulation scene. And then he makes up for it by saying, like, I've thought of this moment 1,000 times, pictured 100 different pairs of breasts, all lovely and desirable and full and begging for my attention, but nothing, and let me repeat this in case you do not quite hear me the first time, nothing comes close to reality. And I'm like, that's a baller move. It's romantic and not at all romantic at the same time.
If we go further into that sex scene, we run into that horrible situation where clearly somebody, and Julia Quinn's like studied to be a medical doctor. She should fucking know where the hymen is.
Maybe the hymen's right up on the cervix.
Yeah, like he's pushing in and then he's like, oh, hit a barrier. And I'm like, that is not the fuck how a vagina works. You were in medical school. You should know better than this.
So did we want to do the Featherington?
We do, but I cut us off discussing the Smythe Smiths, and that there's a moment that kind of always sticks with me where Colin attempts to swallow in a way that will block his ears, And I think about that a lot. Like, I come back to that concept on a semi-regular basis. I'll just be on the train, like, overhearing something that I really wish I wasn't, and be like, gonna try Colin's trick again.
I've got a bugbear, or I apparently always have a bugbear. When a author writes a character who's a good writer,
Go on.
and in this book, she's written two characters who are both great writers. And then how do you make your writing great but different than yours? Like, I feel that that's really quite interesting. But I will say, like, Colin's style and Penelope's style as Whistledown and Julia Quinn are quite different, whilst also tonally kind of work together.
I would 100% read the rest of Colin's stories. I thought they were interesting.
Yeah.
Something that I learnt recently was that those stories that he wrote, like, those were based on Julia Quinn's recollections of traveling in those areas, like those places. She actually spent quite a lot of time in Scotland and in Crete and Cyprus. And so she wrote from
Julia
memory.
Quinn was an Englishman in Italy. I'm here for it.
I always think about people sort of speculating about who they think Julia Quinn sort of considers the like her placeholder sort of character in the series. And so many, I've had conversations with people being like, they think that she must see herself as Lady Whistledown, Penelope, whatever. And I can't help but think of her as more of a Violet, and I don't know why. If she even does actually see herself sort of substituted into the series, which I kind of hope she doesn't.
By the time she started writing the Bridgertons, she'd already written four novels. Splendid Minx, the Moonlight one and the Sunlight one.
Oh, but also To Marry a Marquess.
Oh, yeah. So she's written 4 or 5 books. So realistically, by the time she's getting to the Bridgertons, I think that she probably would have gotten that out of her system. Well, I imagine there's a little bit of her in all of her characters, but I wouldn't say that she's writing herself into them necessarily. She's been doing it for long enough that I would imagine that they're just characters and not, she's not writing her own fantasies.
There's a moment when Colin tries to propose to Penelope and her mother forces Felicity on him because she's oblivious.
Oh, this is why her mother deserved everything that Whistledown said. I'm sorry. Yes, I understand that Penelope may have been mean, but she deserves it. And I am like, I don't care.
Colin's point of view on that, because he did not know it was a family meeting, is so great because he was trying to be managing and he just allowed himself to be right in that horrible situation. But I do love that he continually sticks up for Penelope in front of others and to herself. Yeah. Like, I like that he sets Mrs. Featherington down a bit on who he's interested in. Like, in lots of ways, Colin and Penelope do see the world in the same way. Like, there's lots of things that are, like, sort of mirrored in them. That in 2 different places, they both have, like, go into a panic. And it's so not like them that it's, like, really noticeable. And I loved that they both, talk about Felicity as being, like, his little sister without the incest kind of thing. It's just, I do like that sort of simpatico that's written in there. But the thing is, I get that Penelope would understand him because she's been paying attention to him for a long time. And I get that it's a surprise of how great she is to him, but it's an interesting sort of tension that doesn't exist. Like, he just sort of snaps into full, like, Penelope Stan effect.
It's like once he's decided, or once he notices her, he doesn't stop noticing her. It's like, so the most memorable compliment I ever received, ever, and it still sticks with me some, like, 20 years later. was this really drunk old guy at a bar I was at who stopped me and said, people might not look twice at you, but the second they look back, they'll never look away. And I was like, yeah, he was very old and very drunk, and it didn't matter. I was still a little bit in love with him in that very moment. Like, it's just a beautiful compliment. But like, Colin is that. Like, he didn't think twice about her, but the second that he did, she was all he could think about.
I think also because she has actually been on the periphery of his life for years. So he actually does know a lot about her, and he does know her. It's kind of like what you're implying there, Kate, in that once he knows to notice, once he actually makes that effort to notice, everything kind of clicks. There are things about her that he's absorbed without paying attention. That's my personal belief.
Realistically, they work really well together. They have a similar viewpoint. They complement each other. She's able to provide him confidence when he doesn't have it, and he returns the favor over and over again. And like, they're each other's biggest fans, which it just creates this beautiful relationship in the end. So it gets to the point where, remember how in Benedict and Sophie's book we just couldn't get behind them, and I think Penelope could probably go on a murderous rampage and I'd still be behind this story. All right, should we do What the Featherington?
Yes.
Well, I think What the Featherington for me is that Eloise doesn't find out. Eloise isn't there. Eloise doesn't know.
Yeah, she's disappeared from the ball.
She disappears with her, all of her mysterious plans and whatever. And so we never get to see... ink-stained fingers and disappearing from balls. So we never get to see Eloise's reaction to Penelope's big secret.
I wish there was... This is so stupid. I wish there was more Colin eating scenes.
He eats all the way through the book.
Okay,
he's like Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11. He's constantly got food in his mouth.
Kate, you're in my brain. I nearly wrote that as like the intro. Came so close. Yeah.
Everyone's always ordering sandwiches the second they see him coming because he's just going to be hungry all the time.
Yeah. So this isn't my What the Featherington, but I just realized it was something that I meant to talk about, and then we talked about everything else. But I wanted to kind of flag that the one thing I wish hadn't happened with this book is that I wish that Penelope hadn't lost the however many stones it was. She's fat when we meet her as like a 16-year-old. And it's kind of, now that it's her book, she's lost some of that weight. And now she's like, now she gets to win. I actually really love that she's finally wearing what she wants to wear. To me, that would have been enough. But I think this is it's such a sign of this being like an early 2000s book that she's lost the weight.
Yeah, she has to be thin to win.
Yeah. Because I don't know if you guys have read the Sarah MacLean's Brazen and the Beast, but I was reading that recently. And actually quite a lot of Sarah MacLean's books. Her heroines don't lose weight. I wanted that for Penelope. Like, I wanted her to not have to change on a physical level, like, to gain Colin's notice. I don't think that her weight was necessarily a barrier to him paying attention to her, but I do wish that, I wish that
she'd been able to find her confidence even at a stone heavier than she was, as opposed to finding her confidence because she'd lost the stone or whatever.
Yeah, I wanted her to gain confidence because she was older. Like, I wanted her to gain confidence because she got to wear what she wanted to wear. The further away from my first read of this book that I get, the more that irritates. And I think because there are so many different books that I've read and loved about like heroines who are secretly badass, like yeah, and who live these like secret internal lives, because this is absolutely, I think it's one of my favorite tropes ever. I used to think that the reason that this was one of my favorite books is because it was like sibling over best friend, which is definitely something that I love.
Oh, yeah.
But
Me too.
like, but the more that I think about it, the more I'm like, no, it's that she's got this like internal life that's actually incredible, and she's really careful about who she lets into it. Like, those heroines are my faves. So I wanted the weight thing, and I think it's a sign of when it was published, because we definitely, like, it sits really comfortably with like Susan Elizabeth Phillips, and
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm trying to think who else, but like all of that era.
In today's publishing world, first, maybe they wouldn't have mentioned her weight, like it wouldn't have been a barrier to confidence, or she wouldn't have lost it. Like, there's a lot more recognition of weight not being a barrier to attraction
Or success, or being interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's like, yeah. Anyway, that was something that I did want to talk about.
Yeah, a little bit of mild fat phobia for our book discussion.
But it's like, it's so interesting that there is this like mild fat phobia in a book that then has like a hero that just fucking loves eating.
There is a scene Penelope isn't even hungry, and she knows she shouldn't eat it, and she's like, oh, fuck it, and she just eats like scone or jam or something, and I'm like...
Yeah, and she does it at the ball, too. She's like, oh, thank Christ I'm a chaperone now, so I get to eat these eclairs, or whatever, she couldn't when she was a debutante.
Yes, oh my god, because actually, like, her at that ball, and she's like, put the eclair in the potted plant, like... Just...
Yeah, exactly. It's very clear that Colin and Penelope would have the best chef in London. Like, everybody would want to go to their place for dinner.
Amen.
But so my actual What the Featherington. Sorry, that was a divergent. But my actual What the Featherington. It's not actually in the book, but it's something that I learned and was like, holy shit. Julia Quinn initially intended to kill off Lady Danbury in this book.
Oh.
Yes. She planned to have her die. And then I think it's her editor, was like, no, don't do that. So,
well, I mean, she killed Lady Whistledown. She can't kill Lady Whistledown and Lady Danbury in the same book.
She has spoken about, like, Lady Danbury is one of her favorite characters. And I mean, like, she's a favorite character of a lot of people. But, like, yeah, I read that and kind of, I don't know where the death would have happened.
This is why editing and editors are important. Editors save lives. So, pay your editors. That's what I'm thinking here.
But yeah, I actually can't imagine where and how that character death could have happened. I mean, because like we've kind of touched on it already, that one of the strengths of this book is that it has sort of a bittersweetness to a lot of it. But like that's too bitter. Like I'm not.
It's too much. Yeah.
Now it's time for
What Would Danbury Do?
This is where we imagine that a character from another favourite book has written to our favourite terror of the ton, Lady Danbury, to ask for advice. So, this letter comes from Ruben Torres from Lydia San Andros' historical romance, A Summer for Scandal. Dear Lady Danbury, I recently met an intriguing and opinionated lady, Miss Amelia Cruz, but for some reason, she keeps pushing me into bodies of water. How can I get her to stop this nonsense? What would Danbury do?
I honestly think Lady Danbury would be like, what are you doing that makes her push you into bodies of water? Like, gently bred women don't go around pushing men into water unless they actually deserve it. So maybe look at your behavior and then get right back to me.
Didn't Daphne do this?
Or Anthony deserved it.
She'd just be like, he deserved it, and then rap him over the head with her cane or something. I think she would just be like, well done.
Yeah. Who is this Miss Cruz? I would like to meet her. She sounds like my kind of girl.
Yeah.
So the reason that I recommended A Summer for Scandal is because I was kind of looking for a book that had main characters who were writers, and I quite enjoyed the way that they were keeping up secret identities around their writing. It's very Penelope and Colin. And also just that Amelia is so cool, and she's very careful about who she shows that side of herself to. Like, she really knows who she is, and she's very comfortable with who she is as a person, but she's not particularly popular. And some of that has to do with a bit of an anger issue that, like, the hero kind of agitates. Yeah. So I think that if you love Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, it is worth giving A Summer for Scandal by Lydia San Andreas a go.
That's all for this episode of What Would Danbury Do? We'll be back in a fortnight with To Sir Philip with Love. In the meantime, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram as @BridgertonPod, or send us an email at bridgertonpod@gmail.com. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded land of the Gadigal, Wurundjeri and Boorong people, and edited by audio producer Rudy Bremer on Gadigal country. Thanks for listening, and remember, WWDD.